Remember how Donald Trump, the sitting president of the United States of America, was locked out of his Twitter account and eventually blocked? And remember how the platform only pushed a one-sided narrative in the aftermath of the events of January 6? And do you also remember how the microblogging platform defied the Indian government for months on stretch when asked to adhere to the revised IT laws? Well, if your memory is hazy, we'll remind you once again. All this indeed happened and happened in this reality in the last 1 year. And now the left-biased company is looking to spread its misinformation campaign in the crucial assembly polls, scheduled to begin next month in the important Indian states. Hi and welcome. You're watching TFI English, the national socio-political analysis arm of the TFI Media Group. I'm your host Isha, and in this video I will tell you how Twitter is openly interfering in India's elections. Let's begin. Ahead of the assembly elections scheduled to be held in the states of Goa, Manipur, Punjab, Uttar Pradesh and Uttarakhand, American microblogging platform Twitter has jumped in the fray as well. No, to not contest elections, but sway the result of the elections. Akin to how Twitter polarized the US presidential elections, the Bluebird company is now looking to alter the Indian elections by putting up a facade of helping the voters. Reportedly, Twitter on Thursday announced a series of initiatives with an aim to empower people with necessary information before they cast their votes in the elections. According to an ANI report, the initiatives have been launched under the Jagruk Voter campaign. The news agency informed us saying, ahead of assembly polls in 5 states, Twitter announces a series of initiatives to ensure a high voter turnout and engage voters. They are election search prompt with Election Commission of India, custom emoji and notification campaign, voter education quiz to support voter literacy. Reportedly, when visitors search for relevant keywords on Twitter's Explore page, these prompts will supposedly provide genuine, authoritative sources of information to the users.
You serious?
The press release by the company stated, people will be directed to resources where they can find accurate information on candidate lists, voting dates, polling booths and other topics. Payal Kamath, who looks at public policy and government for Twitter India, was quoted as saying by ET, public discourse is shaped by these conversations and we recognize the responsibility that it places on us to ensure that people are met with reliable and authentic information as they go out to vote. However, the question begets itself, how does Twitter decide which information is authentic and which is not? After all, truth and authenticity can be arbitrary terms used to quash upon the rights of people sitting on the opposite end of the political spectrum. Twitter inadvertently is saying that it will silence the news and stories coming from one particular faction of the politic divide. Safe to say the netizens weren't impressed by Twitter's rather insincere attempt to educate the voters. The microblogging platform was collectively targeted, with many calling it a brazen attempt by a foreign entity to meddle in the Indian elections. One netizen remarked, "This is dangerous. Twitter, Facebook, Google are known to manipulate election in USA and several countries. Spokesperson ECI must dissociate from such private platforms with excessive control on information flow and ban them from any such activity." Even the foreign nationals were circumspect of Twitter's initiative, with a user named Tatino from Queens stating, "Who needs the CIA when we can just send out Twitter to force regime change? Lol." Meanwhile, one user called out the central government for not taking any strict action on Twitter earlier, which has now prompted the company to up its disinformation campaign. You were given the choice between war and dishonor. You chose dishonor and you will have war. The government didn't respond to Twitter's show of strength earlier this year. As a result, Twitter will step up its campaign of disinformation and screw them over in the elections. There's no beating around the bush that former American President Donald Trump and his ultimate ouster from the White House was engineered by the grand coalition of Democrats with the tech giants. Twitter was the head sepoy in the battle and led from the front and created a lopsided field where only anti-Trump agenda was welcomed and pushed on the platform. As a result, Democrat leader Joe Biden, leaning on the crutches of social media platforms and left liberal brigade, managed to gain access to the White House. Similarly, there is a clear divide in the ideologies of Washington and New Delhi. Joe Biden and his coterie of left-leaning Democrats cannot withstand a conservative, nationalist leader making giant strides on the global map. Twitter has a rather flagrant history of censoring free speech, especially of conservatives who are most pronounced in their opposition to Islamists and leftists. The censorship and suspension of right-wing influencers and even individuals by Twitter needs no introduction. Meanwhile, Islamists and left-leaning anarchists are given a long rope by Twitter to keep on publishing whatever nonsense they deem fit. This has led to people identifying Twitter as an organization that has a hidden agenda. Modern politics is all about the narrative war. Whichever side dominates it ends up on the winning side. While Twitter is playing the long game with Biden in its corner, the Indian government still appears to be soft on Twitter. Apart from using the slow and tedious judicial process, the government hasn't really opted for other much effective and legal routes to counter Twitter. However, now is the time to train the guns and show Twitter who is the boss. If the platform is allowed to meddle in the state elections, which are being dubbed as the semi-final to the 2024 general elections, the likes of other Silicon Valley social media companies will have their confidence bolstered, some things which cannot be allowed to happen.